The Dice Tower, episode 537, Magic and Mayhem.
The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. In today's show, Mandy and I go over some of our recent plays, take a look at a book, and discuss our thoughts on the upcoming year in gaming. I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandy Hutchinson.
Hello, Mandy. How are you?
I am good. And yourself?
Pretty darn good. Hey, Mandy, do you know of anything going on in, like, the Kickstarter world that's interesting right now?
I don't know. It's kind of dry for a while. But, oh, what am I saying? Of course, it's the Dice Tower Kickstarter. It's live.
Which I think a lot of the listeners will already, of course, know that. Tom and Eric talked a little bit about it last time. But yes, the Dice Tower, the annual fundraiser for the Dice Tower, is live on Kickstarter. And I know you're going to hear it from Tom and from Eric and from Sam and from Z. But I know Mandy and I just wanted to take a second, too, to say, hey, thank you. We really appreciate all of your support. And we know that it's not always possible to financially support the Dice Tower. And hey, that's okay. But for those of you who are able to, we really, really are grateful for it because we love making the content and we really hope we get to continue to do it and be part of the amazing Dice Tower growth and expansion and evolution that is going on. And we're so happy to have you along on that journey.
And every little bit counts. I know some people I've seen comments, oh, I don't have very much. It's only $1. That doesn't matter. The fact that you're there, you're supporting us, even if it's $1, every little bit is showing your support. So that's fantastic, and we appreciate all of that.
And truly, you can, if you're able to support the crowdfunding campaign for any dollar amount. Well, I think you have to do it for
$1. I think
I think dollars a minimum, yeah. But beyond that, it's totally up to you. And of course, all that money goes to, production costs, business costs, etc., of making the Dice Tower happen. But of course, there are some great thank yous in the campaign if you're able to back at certain levels. I personally am quite fond of the new awesome stickers that have some of our dice icons on them. I think they look amazing, and I can't wait to get my own copies of them.
Yes, I love people when they're like, oh, I wonder which one is Mandy's.
Oh,
it's so obvious.
Eyelashes and a bow in the hair. Hello, how could it be anybody else? There's also a ton of great promos, along with all the great Dice Tower swag, like really cool etched metal dice and plastic dice and dice towers and all the other stuff. There's promos for games like Century Spice Road, Downforce, Terraforming Mars, Pie Town, Dinosaur Island. I mean, just honestly, that's a fraction of the list, right, Mandy?
Oh, it's super long. Lots of amazing things on there. So yeah, definitely check it out.
So if promos are your thing, check it out. There are a lot of pledge levels. It's kind of a complicated campaign page because of all the different options that are out there. So Bless Tom's heart for digging through and trying to organize all of that. That's got to be so much work. But take a look. And if something looks interesting and you can pledge at that level, great. If you're able to throw $1 to the campaign to, support the Dice Tower, great. If you can just say, hey, thanks for the content on a YouTube comment or on the forum. That's cool, too.
Yeah.
Take a look. That is the Dice Tower Kickstarter. Just go to Kickstarter and search The Dice Tower, and you will find it.
Oh, wait. I forgot to talk about that special pledge level where my name is mentioned.
Oh, well, I'm glad you remembered it.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's going to let you forget it, Mandy.
Oh, no. Literally, I think some people will squee with delight when they see that I will, I think it's around the 200,000 or 220,000 stretch goal mark, where if we reach this or surpass, I will be doing my top 100 games.
Which for all y'all who know Mandy, who doesn't like doing top 10s, a top 100, Mandy?
I get so frazzled. I'm just like, oh, what if it's wrong? It can't be wrong. It's my list. I just can't put it there. No, but what if people think it's wrong? You know what? These are all the thoughts that go through my head when I do a top 3, 5. Can you imagine 100? This is going to be pure comedy.
I can't even imagine. And I personally am going to be very happy to watch you suffer, haha,
Thanks for
as
that.
You sort through all that. No, it's It is tough because games are so important to you, and people listen and they care what you say. So I can understand the pressure.
Course.
Yeah, the pressure, Mandy. So much pressure on you. Don't mess it up, Mandy.
Yeah, thanks. So I might want to start now is what you're implying.
Basically, yeah. Well, I think I'm going to think positively. Actually, at the time of this recording, the campaign's been live for less than a day, and we were already surpassed the halfway mark. So I think that's a great start. So Mandy, if I were you, I would start getting that list ready.
Yeah, I think so. They're pushing. So now that we've had all this fun talk about Kickstarter and games, well, I'm going to talk about more games-ish. So when this airs, I will have actually come back from Boardgame Basecamp. And this is taking place just outside of Toronto. And it's like a nice casual weekend where a whole bunch of people, reviewers, publishers, all types of people, gaming people get together and, well, game. You could do some outdoor sports, but right now with this cold freeze, I don't know how much of that is going to ensue. But good times. And I'm glad that I was invited back. This is something that's run by Daryl Andrews, as well as a few others. And it's always a good time. So this is one I think you need to come to, Suzanne, at some point.
I'd love to. I'm super envious that you get to go. It sounds like so much fun. I know a number of people that are attending, and it's a great crowd. You're going to get to play so many awesome games, and it'll be great to hear about it on the next podcast and hear about the experience, but also the games you played there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is, of course, a podcast about board games and card games, and we have been playing a bunch after just getting off the holidays, etc., and having a little more time to game. So let's get to it, because we've got a lot to talk about.
Let's see what games Mandy and Suzanne had played. It's right here on the Dice Tower podcast.
So it's time to look at some of those fun games that we've played over the past couple of weeks. So I'm up first. I'm going to start with Magic Maze. This has been a source of enjoyment at work.
At work? You're playing at work?
Oh, yeah. I can I tell you, before I jump into this, my colleagues are awesome. I have some really cool gaming colleagues, and even people who don't play, and they're just willing to play any type of game that I bring in. So it warms the heart, I must
awesome.
say. So shout out to my colleagues. Woo, woo. Okay. So Magic Maze is designed by Casper Lapp. Artist is Guillaume, and publisher is have Sit Down, Two Tomatoes. I believe there are several publishers. Price is about 28 Canadian, 25 US. This is literally what it says. A mage, a warrior, an elf, and a dwarf are forced to go rob the local Magic Maze shopping mall for all the equipment necessary for their next adventure. That sounds so strange to me. When I first read it, I was like, okay, is this going to be any good? But this game is a real-time cooperative game, and there are several heroes on the board. I think it's 4, actually, to be exact, that anybody can control. So there are no turns. Everybody can go whenever. We'll get to how that works in a minute. And those are the pieces that you're going to be moving about the board. There are several scenarios. I'm really going to focus on the first couple that we played several times over. But this game basically is, I think it plays 1 to 8 players. We'll talk about that as well. In this game, there is no talking. No visual or physical cues can happen, but you're trying to take these pieces and move them through the small, which are tiles. And you're wondering, how do these tiles come out? Well, let me tell you. Every player has I don't remember what it's called, but they have basically like an action tile that lets them know what they can do. So one player may be able to move one of the pawns up, another player to the left. Another player may have, I think it's the looking glass, which allows them to flip the tiles when their conditions are met in order to flip a tile. Oh my goodness. This is like with you staring at someone to do their job, and then there's a little marker that you're trying to put in front of that person. Okay, do this, but you can't talk. You just put it there, do the move, and you're timed. I think the timer goes for like 3 minutes, but there are spaces on the board with little hourglasses. And when you land on one of those, you can flip the timer. So it gives you a bit of time to chat with your team to kind of strategize. But then guess what? As soon as you're touching that board again, no more talking. Wow. FYI, we are really bad and cannot control our hands, apparently. It's frantic. We had a lot of fun. I liked the fact that there were stickers on the pawn, so people who were colorblind could see the whatever faction it was, and they matched on the board. You're trying to get all of your pawns out of the mall. So there are ways to move around the board. They have portals, but I mean, that becomes unavailable once each color has reached its little square, and then they have to get out of the exit. Now, depending on the scenario, may change how your game is played. It can make it a bit more difficult, but the first one's fairly basic, all trying to get through one exit. Like I said before, great lunchtime game. I am not usually a huge fan of real-time games, but I like the fact that it was cooperative, and it really forces you to... I don't even know if you can say creative. I literally just stared someone down because that little marker thing wasn't working. I was like tapping it in front of them. Go, 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 go. And it just, I'm not seeing it. Like, some people don't see what you're seeing.
Yeah.
I did find if you play with more than 5, I found it difficult.
Oh, really?
To play with more. Yeah, I found like 5 or less to me was comfortable. Not that you can't play with 8, because it does say you can. It just gets really crazy.
It gets really chaotic, I bet.
Yeah, so I mean, I enjoy this. I didn't realize how many people like love this game.
Oh, yeah.
Like, a ton of people love this game. And I was shocked, again, not really enjoying too many real-time games. We had a lot of fun. Like, your hearts are going, you're racing, and you're like, okay, let's try it again. You know, because you want to try and beat it if you didn't beat it the first time. Or you want, okay, let's not talk. Make sure we're sitting on our hands. And, you know, so I don't know. We had a good time. And this is one that I had been thinking about getting for a long time. So when I finally got it, I wasn't expecting too much, but really liked it.
That is awesome. I love how genteel you are about this. You're like, you can place the pawn in front of them, and you're tapping the pawn. And like my group, and we're like, we call it it's like the do something pawn, right? And we are like pounding that thing on the table in front of other players. Like, you have a job to do. Get it done.
Not even gonna lie, so legitimately, yeah. We were like banging the table with that.
Yeah, okay, that's more like it, because I'm like, that's just how the game ends up feeling. Like, you have all this energy, and you feel that time pressure, and you get hyper focused on what you're planning out what you want to do with your emotions,
right?
And you miss it. You visually miss something else that somebody else is working on that you can help contribute to. And yeah, it's I've gotten to play this one a number of times, and I just really, really like it. I'm sure it's not for everybody because of the real-time thing, but it's frantic and fun and silly, and it's a cooperative game where somebody really can't alpha. You know, everybody's got their own things, and there's, just enough going on that you kind of end up getting focused, and you can't really, other than the do something pawn, right? When somebody's not doing the thing you want them to do.
Right.
It's just fun. So I'm glad you like it. I'm really glad. And I think it's so cool you get to play at lunch. I'm pretty envious of that.
Yeah, well, it's a short game. Like, I think it plays in 15 minutes, like once you, get through everything. And we've only done the first few scenarios, but I can't wait to keep going. So I've played it, I've taught it many times now. So it's continually going through the first one, but I liked it a lot. If you haven't tried it, you should totally try it. And it's a great age range, I find, for this game,
Yeah, so I can see where the higher player counts, like 8 would be madness. Now, maybe it would be hilarious madness, but I've played it at 4, and I think I've played it at 5 and was fine with it. So that's why I was interested. But I really liked it at 4.
Yeah, 4 was great. 4 was perfect. 5 was like just pushing it, where it started to get not chaotic, but a little tense, I found. And if you like that feeling, then by all means, go with that crazy. It turns it more party-ish, I guess, if you have more people, because then it gets silly. But I really enjoyed it, and I believe isn't there an expansion?
Yeah, there's an expansion out for it too. We haven't gotten through the basic scenarios in the box.
Exactly. But I had to talk about it because we had so much fun. So anyway, enough gushing about Magic Maze. Loved it, and I'm sure many people have tried it. That is Magic Maze. I enjoyed it.
Cool. I want to talk about Smile. Mandy, Smile.
Smiles are free.
Smile is a new game by one of my favorite designers, Michael Schacht. Michael Schacht is a staple in the gaming world, in the analog gaming world. And chances are, if you're a listener out there, chances are you own a game that Michael Schacht designed. Mondo or Coloretto, Zularetto, things like that. He's just an incredibly solid designer. And Smile is one of Michael's newest games. It's published by Z-Man, and it's a card game. It's got a few glass tokens in it, but it's a $20 game. And so it's really affordable. And it's got amazing art by this person named Atha Kanani. And the art is definitely a standout feature as well. Smile is a little bit like No Thanks, which is another favorite game of mine, and maybe with a touch of Coloretto in. And, if you don't have those reference games, well, I'll tell you a little bit about the game. But basically, the cards represent these little creatures, and there's a lot of them have a color assigned to them. Like there's 4 or 5 different colors, and they have a value, including negative values. So you can go like -5 all the way up to 5, and those are the point values on these creatures. So what happens is you get a little lineup of creatures played out on the table for 1 per player. You're taking turns going around trying to quote unquote lure them with your fireflies, which are these little glass tokens that you get. You have to compete for the lowest value monster or creature, whether it's a -5 or a 2. That's the one that is currently being competed over, or I guess against, right? Whether you're trying to take it or not. And similar to No Thanks, if you don't want to take it, you have to put one of your fireflies on. And you keep on going around the table until somebody has to take the creature, wants to take the creature, or you want to take it. Sometimes there's a reason why you might try to bluff other people.
Right.
And you end up getting this card in your tableau, and you get this little collection of creatures. One of the twists, first of all, that tableau is a twist or a difference from No Thanks. You see the creatures that are going to be available in this roundup. So hey, if I can just survive not taking this creature, the next one available is the one I really, really want, which adds a nice little kind of forward-thinking element that a game like No Thanks actually doesn't have, because you don't know what's going to come up next. Also, as you're building out this tableau, those colors on those creatures really matter because they will scare each other away. So if at any time you take a second creature that matches the color of a creature you already have, they both get scared away and you lose both cards.
Do you know how many times I did that when we played?
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't paying attention and legitimate. Oh, there it goes. Bye. Anyway.
That's a bad thing if you have a 2-point and a 5-point and boom, they're gone. It's actually a good thing, right? You might actually want that to happen if you have a negative value card in front of you that you were forced to take earlier. So I thought that was a really intriguing twist as well. You just play through the deck, and at the end of the game, you count the point values of the creatures that you've managed to keep in your collection, and, highest point value wins. It is simple to teach. It is quick and simple to play. But those twists of having the creatures lined up in front of you so you can kind of plan ahead, the twist of having creatures scare each other away and having that be both a positive or a negative thing depending on the context, it's a really smart game. You add in the fact that you have these big, beautiful tarot-sized cards that really lets that adorable kind of, it's not super cutesy. There's a little bit of an edge to that. I don't know how to explain it, but these creatures are cool. Like the art is just really, really cool on it, and the tarot-sized cards highlights that. Smile's a real winner. For $20, I think you get a really solid, engaging game that is light, but still super engaging. So Smile gets a big thumbs up from me.
So this is the one we played on the cruise, right?
Okay, yeah.
So that's right. We played on the cruise. We had a really...
I taught it to a number of people on the cruise.
Yeah.
It was tons of fun.
And we had a really good group. I know when I played it with you and this group. And I have to tell you, when I first saw it, I went, oh, okay, it's one of these. I saw some cards. I'm like, okay, they're cute. And then these tokens, I'm like, oh boy, okay, what are these? And then they're like, the currency is fireflies. I'm like, okay, I'm all about cute. And I'm like, where are we going with this right now? So, but as we played, I at first like, okay, it's simple enough. It seems simple enough, but there are times where you're really in a quandary. It's like, well, that's a really high point value card. I don't want to get rid of it, but you have no choice if you have a card that you got to take. And you really got to manage your fireflies, because I know there was a couple times where we had some people who were tight on fireflies and they were just stuck with a lot of negative cards.
So did you enjoy it or it was okay?
I know. After that, I'm like, no, I actually had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was great. No, it's definitely another one that I could definitely, gosh, I didn't think about that. I could play it at lunch with the colleagues here. I know they listen, so they're not going to ask me to bring this in.
That'll be a great one for lunchtime.
No, but I think it would be really great. And it's funny because it's simple enough to explain, but there's a lot. You got to pay attention. You got to play right.
Definitely. So that was Smile.
Oh boy, all this smiling and talk of smiles and fireflies, and then bam, Harry Potter.
Bum, bum, bum.
Hogwarts battle the Monster Box of Monsters expansion. I have a lot of monsters in that sentence. Okay. So this is designed by Kemi Mandel and Andrew Wolf. Artist is also Kemi Mandel. Publisher is USAopoly. This ranges about $30 Canadian, 24 US.
And that's just for the expansion, though.
Right. So you still need the base game. And I think the base game ranges at about 49 Canadian, around that price point. Okay. So I don't know what that is in American dollars, but just know it's cheaper.
It's probably 40. Yeah.
So I'll do a little background on the basics. So, I mean, this is the type of game you don't want to give too many details. Give the basics because you don't want to spoil it, right? So it is a cooperative deck building game. I know, here we go with the deck builders. I know someone's going to comment on that, but yes, it's a deck builder. And it's played over several years, or like they have the boxes like year 1, year 2, year 3. And this is in the base game that I'm talking about right now. And, you know, you're playing, depending on the character you have. I think I played often with like Ron. I had a friend who played with Hermione. But, you know, if you're familiar with Harry Potter, it's, you know, you're going through the kind of the books or the stories of Harry Potter and fighting, you know, he who shall not be named, Voldemort, and some of the other bad people and wizards in the book. And you're doing that by acquiring cards in a market. And it's really important to acquire cards that cater to your character, because your character does develop over the different years. Oh. Like, for example, I don't want to give too much away here, but for example, we're going to be doing a teach and play actually of this one. I think it'll air before this. So if you're listening and you want to check it out, it is a spoiler one. So, you know, it's giving stuff away. There are characters that have certain things. Like, for example, I think I play Ron, and it's really good for me to have allies in my deck. So when I'm purchasing cards with my influence, I'm trying to pick up a lot more allies because it works to my strength or anything that gives me a lot of damage. In the base game, you're trying to defeat villains. In the expansion, they've added like creature villains. And not only can you use attack, you can also use influence for specific ones. So like your little money tokens.
Okay.
And those are hard because they're like hardy. So you can only put one of those tokens per round. So it takes a long time to kill them. And then you have encounter cards, which make it difficult in the expansion. So you have now an added element that you have to remove these cards, which will actually give you benefits later on. And other cards that come out, the Dark Events cards too, which will also punish you as well. So like, it's just one thing after another that you're trying to defeat, but you're doing it as a team. Mm-hmm. You know, just like in Harry Potter, right? You've got Hermione in the group and you're trying to defeat everything as a team. So obviously the goal is to defeat each year and finish it. So we've finished the base game, and then the expansion basically adds more creatures, villains, characters. I think Luna is added, and a few more other steps in the game, like the encounters and so forth, which makes it much more difficult. Oh boy. I'm surprised that I liked this game, because the first time I saw the art in the base game,
really?
I'm sorry, because they used movie art.
Yep.
I have to be honest, I'm a really big Harry Potter fan, and I was a little disappointed that they didn't use original art.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that, to me, I remember when I first saw the game, I kind of went, and it kind of turned me off a little bit. But I said, you know what, I'm always going to give it a fair chance. And I first played it at a friend's, and I was like, wow, this is really fun. Like, it seemed relatively easy, but I kind of jumped in the third year, which is fairly basic. And as it progressed, I'm like, okay, I like the fact it's getting a bit more difficult. And now with the expansion, I'm like, oh, this is great. We totally didn't make it on the first time we played. And that's good to me, because then you want to keep trying, right? It gives it some replayability. I really enjoyed it. I did enjoy the added elements with the encounters and the events. Are drawing more events, and they're a lot more difficult. And some of the cards that have come out are really great, that are going to help you out for your deck if you play smart, right? So overall, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, we did the playthrough, and fantastic. So I'm a really big fan. The art still bothers me, but I'm willing to overlook it because the game itself is good.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. It sounds really thematic.
Oh, it's super thematic. Like, if you read the books, even when you're processing through the years, like, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is year 1. This is what happened in the book. And this, you know, so I can follow the story. I totally get it. And I can see when things are going to happen. Even as it's coming up, I'm like, oh, this character is going to come into play. Like, I just know. So it's super, super thematic. Like, I will absolutely give it that.
How long does it take to play a typical game of it?
Depends on what year you're in. Okay. Because as you progress, you're adding in more villains. When you get to
they get harder.
Yeah, they get harder. And then when you get to the expansion, you're adding in these, I'm pretty sure they're called encounter cards, which is something else that you have to work towards getting rid of, because they're giving you negative effects every round. So early on, maybe 45 minutes. As you get to the harder levels in the game or into the expansion, you're looking at over like an hour and a half, maybe close to 2 hours, depending on where you are. So it can extend a bit longer. Well, depends how fast you die. So, I don't know how else to say it. But yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed it. Art, again, I wish was original, but it is what it is. So that's Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, the Box of Monsters expansion. Have you played this one?
I haven't. And
Okay.
I don't know if I will, to be honest. I love Harry Potter and I enjoy deck builders. I don't love cooperative games in general.
That's true.
So there's a lot of things that speak to me and a lot of things that don't. And it's not that I wouldn't play it. It's just I don't know if I'm going to lift it to the top, but I don't know that I do love Harry Potter. So
I think about now. Don't judge it based on the first few years because it's super easy.
Okay.
They even tell you if you're familiar with deck builders, you can just skip right to year 3.
Oh, okay.
I think it's year 3. Yeah, and then you could just play from there. Okay. But it really, for me, doesn't start to really pick up until you get to 4, at least 5, even 5, 6, 7.
All right.
Yeah, so give it a chance.
You might be talking me into it.
Give it a chance.
Well, lacking some of that magical element to it, I got to play, worst segue ever. I'm horrible at segues.
It's okay. I got nothing for you.
And, for a little bit of opening the curtain, we're recording fairly late at night. So I think both of us are just a little tired and a little punchy. So pardon us, listeners. Thanks for putting up. I got to play a game of Bali, which is out from White Goblin Games. The designer is Klaus-Jürgen Reed. Do you know who that is?
I know this name.
Exactly. It's one of those names in gaming. People are like, gosh, why does that sound familiar? Hello, it's the designer of Carcassonne.
Is it really? Oh, how did I know this? Oh, wow.
Well, no, it's just one of those things. It's everybody knows Carcassonne, and for some reason, the designer's name just hasn't attached to the name of the game in the way that sometimes like Uwe Rosenberg and Agricola has attached. For some reason, Klaus's name just hasn't. But yeah, so Klaus-Jürgen Reed, art by Dennis Lohausen, who again is a kind of a foundational Euro game illustrator. So this is a really solid, there's a lot of game cred just out of the box before you even play it between those people. So you can pick this up. It's in Europe right now for €25. I know that they're looking for bigger distribution and I hope they get it. This is actually a reprint or retheme. No, not retheme, but a redo. I don't know what the right reword is here of a game called Rapa Nui that was designed a number of years ago. So Bali is actually not a new game. Arguably, this could even qualify for a shelf staple.
I was about to say shelf staple.
So Bali is really a game of hand management with a little bit of drafting and almost like stock management. You've got cards that represent the people in Bali and then that represent some of the goods or the crops like rice and bananas and hot peppers and things like that. And mechanically, it's quite simple. You lay out columns of these cards, and then each turn, you play a card from your hand to your tableau, and then you take a card from those columns and put it into your hand. Some of the elements here, though, is that if you play 2 cards to your tableau, then you take 2 cards from the center. The card that you reveal when you take a card from the center is the action that triggers.
Okay, wait. Go back. I'm trying to catch on this. Okay, repeat it again.
Yeah. So if you've imagine a column of cards and I take the bottom card.
Okay.
The next card up is the one that was actually triggered. So the bottom card that's remaining is actually the one that triggers the action of the other cards. So if I leave a pepper farmer, then pepper farmers will trigger. If I leave a rice farmer will trigger. If I leave a priest will trigger. That kind of thing. So you're looking at the tableau, you're figuring out what cards you need, but you're also looking above a card and trying to figure out, what action do I need to take, right? So that's actually really, really interesting. And as you're building up your tableau, there's farmers for each type of good. So if I leave a pepper farmer, if I trigger a pepper farmer, all the pepper farmers I have, they'll produce a pepper.
This is sounding vaguely familiar, but I'll wait till you're done.
And if I trigger a priest and I have a priest, then my priests trigger. And that's how you kind of get. So when your farmers trigger, you're getting cards into your hand of the different kinds of goods. And then there are shrines. And shrines are so important because this is where a lot of the scoring or that stock market element comes in. Because when a shrine is triggered, every player puts a card from their hand into the shrine. And it's one of their farm goods. It's one of their, peppers or rice or bananas or whatever. At the end of the game, you look at all these cards that have been put into the shrine, and the most is the one that's going to score the highest amount of points.
Okay.
So let's say the rice is most plentiful in there. Then that means rice is the first place good. And then whoever has the most rice will get those points.
Okay.
Right? So it's kind of a double majority thing going on. But because you're feeding that temple, you're trying to control what goes in there, but you're also trying to trigger what goes into your hand, because it doesn't mean anything if you flood the temple if you don't have any in your tableau. It doesn't mean anything if you have everything in your tableau and you have got nothing in the temple. And that's that kind of stock balancing thing and that hand management thing. I find it's a little hard to verbalize the game, but the gameplay is actually quite simple. Mechanically, play a card, take a card, and it is extremely quick to play. Like, you are talking 30-minute game here. Okay. This is a filler. Yeah, it is a filler. It is very, very quick, but there is great tension in that hand management and those choices as, what cards do you take? What cards do you trigger? What cards do you put into the stock market? That kind of thing, or into the temple or the shrine. All of that, there is a nice, rewarding game experience in here. It's simple, it's quick, it's rewarding, it's really a great filler that I quite enjoy. And so that was my play of Bali out from White Goblin Games.
Some of the actions you were talking about, it kind of reminded me of, so I recently, we will talk about this game because I need to play it some more. But Heaven and Ale, when you started talking about triggering this and you get this and it triggers this. And
Sure.
Anyway, there's a whole other conversation between trigger and I forget what the other word was.
That's right. Activate.
Good gracious. But we'll save that for another time. But
we'll save that for another time.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, the basic mechanic there is very similar. But it sounds like this is obviously a little more streamlined, a bit shorter of a game.
It's very short and much lighter than a game like Heaven and Ale.
Oh, absolutely.
Bali's a great filler. It's definitely, it's got all that wonderful design and art cred. It's definitely a package worth checking out in this kind of reprint, reimagining form.
All right. Well, that's what I don't think I got that one. Yeah, I might have to revisit. Well, I've saved the best for last. Or did I? Okay. So we're going to start, I'm going to talk to you about Brides and Bribes. Designed by Andrea Galassi, Elisa Lenardi, Pietro Navarotto. Artist is Alan D'Amico, and the publisher is Space Balloon Games. So I'll give you a brief overview of this game. So it's listed as a strategy type game. In this game, you're basically trying to, I don't even know if I'm saying this right. Basically, you're trying to marry off the daughters, I believe, into these, I'm going to say this wrong, Genoese families. Did I say that correctly?
That sounds about right. That sounds good to me.
Okay. So you play it over 6 rounds. Basically, you're taking the role of a powerful family of Genoa, and you're employing your family members, and each of these family members have unique abilities. Each round, you get to send your family members to the boroughs, and these will, depending on how many players you play, will depend on how many are available to you. And you can hire new employees, get new workers, convince the local lord that your family is worth a marriage with his beautiful daughter. And you can also acquire workshops using workers, objects, and so forth. So in the game, you have these, everything's in tile format. So there's not really, I don't remember there being a lot of cards. I mean, they have the workshops kind of in these bigger kind of cards, but everything seemed to be in tiles. And you have a hand of tiles, but you can build on it by getting these objects like poison and things like that from the different boroughs. Mm-hmm. There are coaches that you use in order to show that, you've taken your action, you put it on top of your tiles once you've placed it at a borough. And you can actually place more than one of these tiles at a location, but you only have, I believe it's a total of, is it 3 actions?
I have 3 carriages.
3 carriages, excuse me, that you can use. And what was I going to say now? So basically, the point of the game, if I'm not mistaken, it feels like it was kind of like you're trying to race to a certain amount at the end of the game, but... Yeah. Okay. In the end, Suzanne had a ton of money when we played this. I, had a decent amount of money. Derek was doing all right. Literally, Suzanne should have won this game. I'm not joking when I say this. And somehow I managed to win. And I don't know how that happened.
Oh.
No, I'm serious. I really don't know how that happened. I feel like it was a bit of luck how that worked out. So I think the cutoff is at 25 points or something to this effect that you're trying to get to the end of the game. And it's a bit of a race because you're trying to get there. Obviously, the first one to do that is going to end the game. There are a few other little tidbits because this game to set up, first of all, is quite fiddly. There's a lot of little bits, a lot of tiles. Again, like I said, depending on how many players are playing the set, it's a lot. The board itself was very busy. And something that was, I wouldn't say, no, it bothered me. The game itself has certain colors, and then the meeples are the same colors as colors in the game. It is the most confusing thing, because then I'm like, oh, are those meeples for my player? No, they're something else. They're not meant for you. Please don't use colors that are in the game as, player colors that you're playing. It's very confusing. So that right there threw me for a loop, and I know I'm not the only one. The theme, first of all, the title, I wasn't feeling the title, but I said, you know what, we'll try it and give it a shake. And then I'm reading it and what it's about, and I said, oh, this is going down a very interesting path. Fine, it's relatable to, I guess, the time period. Not a big deal. So, not for me particularly. However, somebody else may find that appealing, and that's okay. Everyone's got entitled to their taste. It wasn't a theme for me particularly. The components themselves, the carriages had a very interesting look to them. I'm going to let you maybe look it up and you decide what it looks like. I personally would have gone a slightly different route. Oh boy. It's a 3-player minimum game. Games that are 3-player minimum for me are ones that generally will not hit the table often.
Sure, that can be tough.
It's hard. And I mean, for some people that could be great. I know when we played this game with Derek, I will say he loved it. He raved about it and he really, really enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. Yep. I did not have the same experience. And if I could win a game and not really know how it happened, and I've played it a couple times. And so for me, I feel like I'm, all the things I disliked about the game, but the coins were nice.
The coins aren't included in the game. Those are Derek's. He brought those separately.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, moving on. So, wow.
Yeah, I will say it wasn't my favorite. One of the things, though, along with, I think you called out a really excellent issue with having player colors and game color pieces matching, like you sharing a color, that's just a big no-no in any board game. You have to use different colors. It's Deus. There's a game called Deus that had some color mixing up, and I love Deus but that was a horrible, and I think it was a manufacturing issue. Mm-hmm. It was unintentional. The other thing about this one that bothered me while we were playing is I felt like the board, some of the components the graphic design wasn't efficient because it was confusing. There were times when you wanted to know what your options were, what your actions were, or what your action options were, or your action point options were. And in the corner of the board, there was a huge blank space, essentially, that had like the title of the game, and then like this rolling hill, like this pastoral scene, and nothing. I'm like, oh man, they could have printed the action orders right up there, and it would have been a resource for everybody to see. What a perfect place for that.
Right.
Or we each got these large personal player boards, and they had some hints at the bottom, but they weren't consistent what they represented. Some represented endgame points and some represented in-game transactions.
Right.
And again, it was actually quite a large player board, but beyond those 3 little bits at the bottom, there was no, it would have been another spot that you could have included useful, helpful gameplay information, because there was enough going on that you would want to know some conversions and things and actions and things like that. And I just felt like it was inefficient or wasteful graphic design that they didn't have that element that would have really helped the gameplay flow. So that was probably one of my big criticisms of it.
And I thought, okay, maybe the gameplay could be interesting, because you had those actions, which are secret, right? When you're placing your tiles on the board, and I didn't mention this, but they're face down, they're secret. So we don't know what the tiles are. And then, the turn order could kind of screw someone up a little bit, whether they've been poisoned or perhaps they're marrying a daughter. They have a character that's marrying a daughter. You wanted to marry that daughter, but you don't have enough. I don't know if it's influence. I might be using the incorrect terminology here to do so. So, you need a lot of blocking there. I found the pieces very clunky because they were tiles, not cards necessarily. And which is fine. And that's just my preference. So some people really enjoy that. It's just my preference. I have big hands and I just found it didn't work for me. And I don't know. I was waiting for that twist or something to click to kind of, okay, what's the strategy here? But I'm like, okay, well, I could just place a tile here. Oh, let's marry it off here, block something here. I just didn't feel like I could get that strategic game flow happening. I don't know. So, I mean, overall, I think this is a game that I know some people enjoy. Like I said, Derek really enjoys it. I had a few I had a lot of issues with the components and some other things. Gameplay for me was okay. I did feel, it was a bit random for me at some points because I was just doing some actions to, see what it did. I'm like, oh, great, it worked out. I just feel like I didn't have the thought there that it made me feel satisfied with this game. So for me, this is not a game that I personally would want it to keep in my collection, but I implore you to check it out and see. Perhaps it is the game for you. So that's Brides and Bribes.
Perhaps. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is kind of two games. I don't know. Am I cheating here? It's Deckscape. So, right now, Exit, Unlock, these kind of escape room, adventure room style card games are a thing. And they're a really, really cool thing. I think a lot of people have talked about Unlock and Exit, but there's also a third kind of series in this card kind of based ones called Deckscape from DV Giacchi?
Yeah,
Giacchi. And these are designed by Martino Chiacciarera and Silvano Sorrentino, and the art's by Alberto Bontempi. I really don't know what they retail for. I imagine they're in the $20 range or less, because it is just a deck of cards in a very small deck box. But I've played both of them. There's two out right now, Test Time and Fate of London. And this is going to be spoiler free, so I'm not going to give away any secrets that would inhibit your ability to play the game. But I really, really like these. They don't surpass my favorite, Exit. Exit is still my favorite of those three, Exit, Unlock, and Deckscape. But there are some benefits to Deckscape that, depending on what you're looking for, you may want to take into account. When you open the box, it is just a deck of cards. They're a little bit oversized. They actually have a little tutorial deck, so there is a learner scenario or puzzle set that you get to play just to familiarize you with the system. There is a little bit of an intricacy to the system. And then it's like Unlock, you just go through the deck and do what it says. Don't go any deeper. You're not allowed to hunt through it. And it really does play in about 45 to 90 minutes, depending on your group in this scenario, and just, if the puzzles click with you or not. I actually like this. I think Deckscape is the best style of these games if you have a slightly larger group, because I think the puzzles split up better. One of the core mechanisms, so that, again, this isn't spoiling because it's just a core mechanism that you're going to get to no matter what, is the deck gets eventually split up into separate small decks.
Okay.
And then you can kind of work through those puzzles separately, which I think one of my biggest complaints about Exit is that it's hard to share, right? You get this little tiny pamphlet and then a few like individual components, but it's hard to see, it's hard to share that little pamphlet. Whereas with Deckscape, you can kind of pass the cards around and you can kind of split up the decks even amongst players, which I think facilitates puzzle sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that about Deckscape. There's a nice mix of puzzles from kind of visual identification or, hidden objects or piecing together things to work together. So there's a nice puzzle mix in there. You don't destroy anything, so it's absolutely shareable, reusable, all that kind of stuff. And, it's fun scenarios. Test Time, Time Machine, Fate of London, you're trying to prevent a bomb going off or whatever. I will say they feel more linear. I do feel Exit feels a little more free form where, you can go back and forth between puzzles and figure things out. Whereas with Deckscape, I do feel like you do have a certain order to certain things that have to happen. And it just feels a little more linear. I don't think that that's necessarily a criticism. It's just a factor.
I was about to say, is it constricting?
I don't feel that way. I did reach, in one of our plays, we did reach a point where we realized we missed something because we were at a dead end. And so then we're like, okay, well, clearly we missed something, so let's go figure out what we missed. And that was fine. Maybe that's a good thing because it helped us realize that we had missed something. There's no app integration or anything like that, which having just recently played an Unlock, I kind of in a way enjoy that because, oh my gosh, the app can add stress, that timer pressure. But, Deckscape, if you are into these escape room card games, I definitely recommend Deckscape. I had a lot of fun with both of them, and I definitely think they're worth a try and worth seeking out. So that is a Deckscape.
I'll have to look. I'm still, when this airs, I will have played some of the Exit games that are sitting on my pile of games to play, so maybe I can add this as well. I'd like to see the comparison of the two because I've not played any. So,
oh my goodness, we got to get that fixed.
I know, but now I've got them there. I just have to play them. Just before we finish off with this part of the show, I wanted to do a quick revisit to Merlin.
Oh.
So yes, I know. And people have been asking me. So the last time I had spoken about Merlin, it was leaving me a little lukewarm.
Okay.
I had played it a few times. I have since played it several more times, and I'm enjoying it a little bit more.
Oh.
It's still not like my top 3.
Okay.
But it is definitely not one I would take out of the collection. I did enjoy it. And we had a good time playing it as well at the cruise.
Boy, I really enjoyed it. Yeah. I think I enjoyed it more than you did.
I think you did. I mean, and we could revisit this, but just because people had been asking. And also Keeper is one that is now on my radar, which was not on my radar before. So something I'm hoping to discuss with you in an upcoming episode.
Dun, dun, dun. All right. Should we revisit a segment, Mandy?
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. I think some people might be really excited for this.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Hit that pledge button and take my money. So for some of you, this may be a glorious moment. Maybe not for others, but we decided to bring back Take My Money. Ding. So if this is your first time listening, this is where we talk about a Kickstarter that, stands out to us or we're interested to talk about and, talk about with everybody on the podcast. We had a lot of people saying, you need to bring it back. We like hearing about, what you think is great. And I know Suzanne already does a fabulous job on the Dice Tower videos on Board Game Breakfast with her Kickstarter segment. She runs through quite a few. We're just kind of shining the light on one. Doesn't mean that we love it, but it might be one that might be interesting to somebody else or perhaps interesting to us. So we've brought it back in hopes that this will make people very happy and continue to enjoy hearing about a little bit about Kickstarters.
And I think that's great because, the fact is, in fact, they just released data from Kickstarter about their year in gaming, and tabletop games are taking off like a rocket on Kickstarter. It's just a fact. $135+ million in 2017. Wow. It's outstripping video games by exponential percentages. So it's a thing. And I think it's a good thing for us to talk about in the podcast because I think whether, love it, hate it, whatever, crowdfunding is a huge factor in board games today. And we can't ignore that. So we definitely have a pretty cool project, though, today I'm excited about. And, these are the kinds of things you get through crowdfunding nowadays. The Conjurers Almanac. Escape This Book is an escape room in a book. So we just talked a little bit about Deckscape and Exit and the card games. This guy named Roy Laban is basically taking that concept and putting it into a book form. I think that sounds super duper cool. So, there's going to be all different types of puzzles. I think it's like about 250 pages. There's going to be hidden puzzles, some that are in plain sight, some that lead to other puzzles, some that you have to piece together. There's meta puzzles, like all this kind of stuff. It's a little hard to talk about because, it can be spoilerish if you go too deep into what it is. But thematically, you find this Conjurer's Almanac in an old magic shop, right? And so you're deciphering and figuring out what the hook is to this book. The designer is actually this guy named Roy, and he's from actually my area, from the Seattle, Washington area. And he's the co-founder of something called the Microsoft Puzzle Hunt. And if people aren't familiar with this is a big deal. I mean, it started off small, and like today, it's like this huge, massive thing. And it's this, for people who aren't familiar with the Puzzle Hunts, it's kind of like an escape room, but on a much larger scale. And you go from building to building, you get vans. Like the complexity is, like I remember one of the puzzles that my friend was telling me about was you got into the van, it's a multi-day thing. And one of the puzzles involved breathing on the glass of the window in the van because the organizers had snuck in and like written with like their finger on the window.
Creepy.
Like they go hard and deep. And the designer of the Conjurer's Almanac is the co-founder of that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, quite frankly, I think it looks really, really interesting. They say you can do the book solo. They also say it's good for a group of 2 to 3 players. And from a Kickstarter point of view, I guess they're making the Kickstarter edition like color and it's a nicer printing version. There's going to be a mass market version, but it's not going to be as nice. So it is going to be $49 to get a copy, the basic copy of the book, plus shipping, which when I looked at it, shipping was actually quite high, but they actually addressed that on the webpage too. And it's quite high for us in the US, Mandy, not just for you.
Oh, wait. So now you're feeling the shipping pinch that us Canadians, Australians, etc. feel? Aw, Muffin.
Did you just, we're going to have words later. Did you just call me Muffin? Oh my goodness.
Sure did.
It's on. And they explained that they want the books to arrive in really great condition. So they're actually going to ship them in boxes instead of envelopes, which really ups the shipping cost. But I mean, whether you approve of that or not, it shows they've put some care into it and things like that. So I don't know, Mandy, you haven't done the escape room games. Does an escape room book sound interesting to you?
Yeah, so all of the escape stuff sounds super interesting. And I love books. And I miss the fact that people are moving away from books a little bit. A lot of people are kind of going toward electronics. I love the fact that it's a book, and the fact that it's a book and it has a gaming element to it. That makes it more enjoyable. So something that I can keep but also play, quote unquote. I wouldn't play it solo. I just don't play games solo. I tend to cheat, so I gotta stay honest. I can't.
Good to know.
Being honest. So, I mean, the fact that it's a small group, 2 to 3 people, I like that, because I do have a few friends that this is something that they would definitely get into. And I think that in a book format, it would just, I don't know, I feel like it would lend itself to, a bit more thematic and portability. It's great. I like the concept, and I think I like the way that the concept is packaged. Yeah. And the fact that they are giving it, I don't want to say a cleanup, but they're adding it. I see you said it's going to be in color.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, I think it's really neat. And I'm glad to see that they're sticking to, I guess, a traditional form of doing a game.
I hadn't thought about that angle of it. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So if that sounds interesting to you, that's The Conjurers Almanac, Escape This Book. It's on Kickstarter right now. I think the campaign goes through January 21st. So if you've missed the campaign, I apologize. The good news is that they do have a mass market edition planned. And hey, if you're listening to this episode in a more timely fashion, check it out.
Let your fingers do the walking in. Tap that app. All right. I feel like we haven't done some Tap That app chat in a long time. So I'm a little excited because we've got so many to talk about. Well, we're only going to talk about 2 today, but, get the ball rolling. So I had the pleasure of playing Lotus. You're like, that sounds familiar. Well, it is. It's a game by Renegade Game Studio, but Direwolf Digital has put this together. It's available in iOS and Android format, but the full release is not going to be until the late summer. So no one get mad at me. It's coming, okay? So if you're not familiar with the game Lotus, basically you're trying to, I don't know if I want to say garden, but you're trying to plant a variety of flowers, and you want to try and complete them in order to get points, but even if you don't complete them, you could have majority and still get points or get benefits from doing so. There are a variety of actions in the game, adding petals to flowers, exchanging cards, and adding one of your guardian tokens, and it can be a little ladybug or a dragonfly that you can add to a flower to give you majority on that flower, so you can take the cards, which give you points. You also can acquire abilities throughout the game, which allows you to draw more cards, or add an Elder Guardian, which gives you, I think, an extra point toward majority and things like that in the game. Basically, most points wins the game. I play this a lot at 2 players now that I think about it. But it's a really pretty game, really nice game, very simple, easy to explain. I really enjoy it. In the app, it does have a solo mode, easy, medium, and hard. So I did play all of them. I found medium for me was, well, I could win. I got to hard. Yeah, well, got a little tricky, but it did have some, what's the word I'm looking for? There was some, the word is escaping me. There was some
challenge
challenge. Thank you. Okay. That's the word. It's late. I'm a little sleepy. So there was a bit of a challenge there on the hard level. They do have multiplayer. There is a pass and play that is available. The rules overview you have to read. So it's not, some of them will provide it to you in a video format. Some will provide it to you where you're kind of playing as they explain it. This one, the rules are kind of a read through.
Yeah.
They also had something in the app where it says playing Renegade games increases your Renegade score. So when you complete challenges installing Renegade applications, this also increases your score. So this is something else that they've kind of added into the app.
Oh, they've like metagamed it.
So I'm like, oh,
wow,
smart,
that's cool.
Smart. So, and I know that Lanterns has popped up in there, but we will save that for another discussion. Overall, I thought playing it was fairly straightforward. I mean, to be fair, I know the game, but it's not something that would have been difficult to pick up. Even if I hadn't read the rules and went into and just started playing, I actually think that it wouldn't have been super difficult to figure out. It's really simple, like a lot of like touching, dragging on the screen. It wasn't overly complicated. I find some apps try to do a lot of things and you're like, okay, what do I press? Or I'm doing something, which is an app we're going to talk about on our next segment that I just couldn't play the game because it was difficult. Yeah, I had some problems. So this one was there was a real ease to it, and it did play. The game was definitely portrayed properly in the app. Some games change; it's not as nice. Really like the way the way they showed the flowers and its little magical, sparkly things happening. I enjoyed the layout. It was clear. And I was playing it on my phone. I play a lot of games on my phone. So if I'm having a hard time seeing it, it's harder to play. This was great. I had no issues. It was quick. I didn't find it overly lengthy. Really straightforward app, and I liked it. I didn't have any problems, no crashes. Have you had a chance to try this one yet?
Yeah, I have, and really concur with everything you said. I think, so I won't repeat it. I will add that one of the details I actually like in the app version that kind of wish existed in the physical version, because I actually really love Lotus. We always say it's the prettiest, meanest game,
it's so
right?
true.
Because it's an area control game, and it is cutthroat, but it's so pretty with these. You're doing flowers with little ladybugs,
and
but no, it's like
let me
you're
hack off your flower and take it for points.
Opponents in the back, right? That kind of thing. Literally my single complaint about Lotus is that I think it's the 5 and the 7 flower.
Yes, I know
are
what you're
both
going to say.
Pink. The petals have different shapes to them, but they're both pink. And you know, in quick play, it can be a little. You just have to spend an extra second to concentrate on sometimes which they are. It's very close. Whereas in the app, I noticed they made one of them like a different, like a much more brilliant color.
Yes. I did notice that
And
as well.
I really like that element to the app. I thought that was a nice extra detail they added. But yeah, all the extra, similar to lanterns, which again, we won't, the different day, different episode. But
right.
They added a lot of ambient details just to kind of immerse you into that world, like the little sparkles you talked about, and this, a little bit of motion and animation. Not too much, just enough to like up the thematic feel, which I think is really pleasant. Right. So yeah, I really enjoy it too.
Oh, and I might add, I don't generally play games with the volume on because I'm usually at work. On my lunch break. Come on now. And I did check it out. It's light. It's not heavy or anything like that. So if you do like to play it, it's not super noisy. So that is Lotus, the app for Lotus, and full release late summer. So keep an eye out for it.
I wanted to talk about a game called Herald, which actually isn't. It's a card game. I think it was released in 2015 or something like that. I had never heard of it before until I found the app version.
I've never even heard of this.
Yeah, it's published originally, I think, by Runes Edition, and then Eagle Griffin picked it up. Mm-hmm. But the app is actually, it's really interesting how Asmodee Digital's kind of taken over the app world, but they do great work. So, go for it.
Exactly.
Because Asmodee Digital puts out the app, even though it's an Eagle Griffin game. It's available on iOS and Android, and it's $1.99. So it's really inexpensive. This is a hand management game for all intents and purposes, where you've got these cards that represent different kind of traditional RPG classes, like a bard or a merchant or a warrior, etc. And you've got multiple areas. You've got kind of a center area called the King's Council, and then you've got your own little village, which it vaguely reminds me, there's something, if you've played Capital Lux, which is one of my favorite games.
Great game.
There's a little hint of that in this game. So if you've played, keep that in mind. Basically, each turn, you've got this hand of cards. You're going to play a card to the King's Council and a card to your village. And they play off of each other for end game scoring, because ultimately the number of cards in the King's Council will be the points that your cards are worth. So if I have 2 bards in the King Council and 2 bards in front of me, I get 4 points. Mm-hmm. When you play cards to your village, though, each of these cards has a special ability. And a lot of them deal with flipping cards. So you can actually, it'll say flip over, 2 cards in 2 different areas. Face down cards don't count for scoring at all. So there's definitely a lot of player interaction in this game, which if that's not your thing, keep that in mind. But you can reach over and flip over their cards. And then, of course, if you use that card and you've got cards that were turned over, you can flip them back and reveal them. So there's a little, you can kind of mitigate that.
Right.
And on top of that, the cards will play off of each other. So bards may score extra points if they're with seafarers, or merchants may score more if they're with warriors or whatever. So there's a lot of that intricacy in the scoring as well. Here's a great example of where an app makes me want to seek out the physical game. That's how much I enjoy the app. I really enjoy it. It's got this, like the card art represents like animals, like anthropomorphic animals and, warrior gear or whatever. Like there's boars and bears and goats and kitty cats and things like that. And it's cute. Like it's nice. Gameplay's really simple, really quick, but that hand management of like, okay, how do I balance what I put to the King's Council versus what I put here? What is my opponent doing? Do I need that special ability? Am I going for that combo scoring? there's a nice amount going on there for a relatively quick game. So Herald is definitely worth a look. It has no pass and play, which is interesting, but it does have online, and there is like a hard mode against an AI. There's some optional rule sets that you can play with, and like a small expansion included as well. So Herald, if that kind of hand management play appeals to you, it's definitely worth checking out in app form.
Is it any purchase within the app, or it's just a one-time?
I actually don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay,
that
sorry.
mini expansion may be a small, like
Right.
it'd probably be 99 cents at most, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Give it a little oomph. Okay, sounds interesting. I've never heard of this, so there you go.
Yeah, I hadn't either.
I'm even learning things on our podcast, so thanks for sharing that one.
Definitely. All right. Shall we move and talk about the year that is coming up in gaming and some of the good stuff that we are looking forward to?
Oh, yeah. So many great points brought up and ideas. I can't wait to talk about it. We ask, you respond, we discuss. Let's talk hot topics in Victory Points.
It's been a little while since we've had a Victory Point segment, and it's nice to be back. Mandy and I were talking a little bit earlier about how it's been a while since we feel like we've had a quote-unquote normal episode. So thank you to everybody on Board Game Geek. For those of you unfamiliar with Victory Points, this is our chance to pull in some of you into the conversation. And we post a poll, or in this case, we started a thread on our Board Game Geek Guild and asked, hey, what do you think? What are you predicting about the upcoming year in gaming? What will be hot? What's going to fade? What would you like to see more or less of? And that kind of thing. And just asked you to comment. So thank you to everybody who took some time to drop your thoughts. We definitely want to share some of them here. It was fun to see a few themes emerge. And I think a few themes that kind of clicked with us as well, Mandy.
Absolutely.
One of the first ones that definitely instantly we recognized was apps seemed to be a theme.
Yeah, which I think is, well, we'll get into what I think about it, but yeah, that's definitely one that was prominent. So we have a few, the theme, it's in a few of the comments, so I'm just going to kind of read through the comments, and then we'll have a quick discussion about it afterward. So Cheston D states, I think we will see a huge boom in app versions of board games. Jodo, more apps, either digital versions of cardboard or accessory apps to use alongside the cardboard. Definitely seeing a lot of that. And
Zulko?
I hope I'm saying that right. Yeah. I think there will be at least one popular game where the app not only augments the gaming experience, but where the game is a true blend of board game and an electronic game with an app to point people to start. I'm not sure if I'm reading that right. People
to sort of argue if it can still be called a board game. Yeah.
Okay, so let's kind of scroll back here and have a little chat about it. I definitely think apps is going to be a thing. I know a lot of people are resisting this, but there are also a lot of people who are embracing it. And yes, I know for myself, I definitely like something that's not taking over a game, but kind of uses a part of a game, like as a, an additional bit, like, I'm trying to think of games who do this. So, you have like Mansions of Madness, which actually is an integral part of the game, but I don't find it overtakes it. I don't know. I find it worked well in that particular circumstance.
What about like a Meeple Circus?
I was just about to say, and Meeple Circus is another one where, you have your music. Anyway, that's a really fun one. I love that. But, it's basically based on the card's music. It's not interfering. So that's another good one. But I think you're going to see more of it. I mean, we're living in a technology age. It's going to creep its way into everything.
Yeah. And there's kind of two elements to it, right? There's the board game apps where you're porting over a physical game into the digital world, right? Like what we just talked about with Herald and with Lotus. But then, what you were just talking about too, I think is a really interesting element too, is the app enhanced board games or app functions related to the physical play that you have, like Mansions of Madness, all the things you mentioned. And I think that, the idea of augmented reality could start coming into play, and I think we'll see that. I mean, we've already seen that with The Mask of Anubis.
Yes.
Have you seen that?
Okay, so my friend Carol, who I also do some video work with, had mentioned this to me. I don't know much about the game, but she seemed really intrigued by it. So I'll let you kind of go forward with this, but I've heard things about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's you get this mask and it slips your phone, you slip your phone into it, and it creates that augmented reality where you're kind of going through these caverns, and then you, as a gameplay element, the player in the mask goes through it, has to absorb all the information that they see, and then they go to the table after they run through it, and you have physical pieces that you use to try to lay out what you just saw. So you try to recreate the environment using these cardboard pieces based on what you saw in that mask through the app. It's interesting. I mean, I don't know if for me personally it succeeded fully at what they're trying to do, but I really, really applaud their creativity and innovation and taking it to the next level and introducing something new, introducing a new way to integrate technology into board games. Again, like you said earlier, Mandy, I know that this is hugely, hugely contentious for a lot of board gamers who desperately do not want digital integration. And I think the good thing is that while I do agree with, people like Cheston D and Jodo that we're going to see a lot more apps in this upcoming year. In fact, you and I maybe have a little behind the scenes information about some of the things that are coming up. Analog's not going away, right? So while it's almost like a new subcategory is being created. It doesn't take away from what we've already got going on and all the great games that are still coming out that are pure analog experiences. But now we have this new subcategory, this new design space for game designers to explore, to enhance it with digital elements. And there are things digital you can do that you just can't do as well physically. Randomization is actually a great example. Or like changing factors. Or if you have a lot of things that you're trying to track, like all those things can be done better by a digital tool, right? Than necessarily like cards and tokens and things. So I don't know. How do you feel about it, Mandy? Are you excited or are you like, eh?
See, and it depends for me on how it's being used. Like I bring up the example of books because, we talked about books. I still like a book. And it seems like everybody's got a Kindle or they have the audiobooks and these are fine, but it's hard when you're so used to doing something a certain way. You can't fight it. It's happening. And I think with apps in particular, I kind of was a little resistant at first with apps. I'm like, okay, I have the game. I don't really need it. But I had to tell you, I'm so busy all the time. It's really nice to be like, I could just whip it out on my phone and get a play in. You know what I mean? Of the app versus like, okay, I got to wait till I get home. I may not even get it out to the table. And then, okay, I got to drive out to my friend's house to play. I still like those experiences, but there are times where it's just not feasible. So I can play it to death on my phone when I'm out and about. And hell, I still have the game itself here that I can also play. So for me, I embrace the apps. I think it's great because you're finding it's a lot of games that already exist. And even, I don't know, have there been games on app that are not in board game format?
That's a really interesting question. And yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that really intrigues me because I am a technologist and because I am fascinated by board game apps and have been for years. Games like Hearthstone.
Yes, I have a friend who's
that's a CCG,
that.
but a digital thing. There's a game called Card City Nights. There are games like Miracle Merchant or Armello. These are absolute Age of Rivals. These are what could almost be physical games. They borrow or use absolute core mechanisms for physical card games, like a CCG or a game of solitaire or whatever. But they have one extra element that just is done better in digital. So Hearthstone, as an example, all that, the mana tracking and all of those conditions, the damage and conditions that you have on all those different characters. I feel like a game like Sentinels of the Multiverse almost approached that, where you had freeze damage, lightning, but I actually didn't like that about Sentinels. I felt it was fiddly tracking all of those things.
Yes,
that's why I love the app version, because the game's great.
And I was about to say, I think I would actually like the app version because I played the board game of that one, and exactly for that reason. Yeah.
Oh, the
I had
app
some
is
issues. Yeah.
Phenomenal. But so yeah, it's interesting to see, and these are games designed not by like Asmodee saying, oh, hey, we're going to venture into digital first. No, these are like other game, video game creators being inspired by the board game world and notching it in a different angle, which I think is, interesting.
Yeah. And I think everyone can decide, if you don't want to get into it or you can decide to what degree you want it to be part of your gaming world.
Yeah, it's a great point.
We're still going to have tabletop games. You don't want apps? Fine. You don't necessarily need to do it. If there's a game that incorporates one. I mean, there are some games, I think it's Alchemist, where you can play it with or without the app. If you really like that extra difficult working it out, you don't need the app. If you're someone like me, I'm like, okay, I want the app just for that little bit of the game. And that's okay. It's your level of comfort. So I can't say that I'm surprised to see apps in a lot of the responses. Definitely one that I think is just going to continue to grow.
Yeah, I agree. Another theme that we kind of saw emerge was a number of people mentioned the idea of mergers or partnerships. So I thought that was really observant of people out there.
Yeah, so let's check out what everyone's saying here. So we have Jodo that says, more mergers / takeovers, straight to the point. I like that. And then we have Burke 4865. We will see another company start buying up smaller ones like Asmodee has been doing, and we've all seen that. Mad Bonna, surprising, she says, a medium-ish small game company, example Portal, Stronghold, Renegade, Red Raven, will acquire a rather large partnership with another company. So that's interesting. So yeah, so those are just some of the things relating to mergers.
Tom would be really the person to try to, squeeze and put pressure on, right? Because Tom is the one that has all that great insider knowledge on these things. But
absolutely.
I feel like that's a great, I don't know if my brain would have gone there. I think that's really insightful by the guild. I think that that is entirely possible that we'll see a little more consolidation or certainly partnership.
But I feel like that's business. No? I feel this happens in fashion. This happens in technology. It's something that just happens. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's a great business move, right? I mean, if you're able to sell off, your company and it's all this money. I mean, didn't this just happen the other day with Lucasfilms and Disney? And, I just feel it happens all the time. I just think because maybe the board game world is not as big as some of these, it's just really, you really notice it. But I don't think that's going away either. I think that's something that will continue to happen. I mean, yes, Asmodee's on fire with acquiring all these different companies. But I do find it interesting with Mad Bond and her comment relating to medium-ish small game companies partnering with others.
Well, right. And that could almost, if that were to come true, you could almost wonder if that's a direct response to some of the moves bigger game companies have been making, right? A move to be more competitive, to consolidate and combine production costs and make business practices more efficient, to remain competitive and be able to produce really great games for all of us out there.
Yeah, as long as they're not losing their identities. Nothing is, yes, you want to do well for your business, but you don't want to lose who you are as a business or a person or what you stand for. You always want to maintain that. And that's hard with takeover. So
we shall see. We'll just have to keep our eyes open. And then if a merger is announced, we can point back to all of our awesome guild members and be like, yep, you were smart.
Yes, exactly.
The next theme that arose, I was fascinated by because it kind of hit home for me. And I know for you as well, Mandy. But actually, gaming becoming more inclusive was something brought up by a number of responders, which was both interesting and in a way exciting for me to see.
Absolutely. Me too. I was very impressed when I saw that. So yeah, very exciting. So let's see what we have a few comments relating to that are. So I always say this wrong. Gisensha. The gradual improvement in representation in games that we've seen over the past few years. So this is something that they've said. And Grimbo. Inclusiveness / representation will be almost universal in 2018 games. Firstly, because it's the right thing to do. Yeah. And secondly, because it makes economic / marketing sense for the publishers. And we're going to talk about that because I think the nail is hit on the head in that second part especially. So those are some of the comments that came up in relation to inclusion. And I'm legitimately going to say this. I mean, yes, it's nice to look at something and say, hey, that kind of looks like me, or that's cool. There's a variety of people. I mean, you always kind of, I don't want to say you relate better, but it kind of makes you feel, okay, I want to see what this is about. If it's a terrible game, it's a terrible game, right? Or if it's a great game, it's a great game. But it's nice to see that because it doesn't always happen. It's a business. At the end of the day, we have lots of different people that live in this world, and people are there at a business to make money. If you start catering to people who are maybe not catering to before, you may see an increase in the games that have more inclusivity. I'm not saying that's the entire thing, but I mean, at the end of the day, business is business. It's going to be great for other people who want to see this inclusivity, which I think is fantastic. It should be representative of, of society and of other people. But I definitely think, yes, money's a factor. If it's going to make money, it will continue to grow. So I feel like it's going to be one of those things where there are people who are genuinely invested in making inclusivity in games happen. I know this because I've spoken to people. I'm not saying that everyone is like that, but that really, really drives it home for me. So I think it's going to be toes dipping in the water to see how it goes. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is a journey, right? And I love Grimbo's optimism about, it being inclusive, represented being universal. I don't know if I'm quite there because I think there's no hard definition around what that means, right? I think we talked in our last episode about topiary and just, it was cool that one of their meeples represented a gamer in a wheelchair. What a simple way to make it just a little more inclusive. But to your point about business, but also I just think there's growing awareness, just unilaterally, there's growing awareness about the concept that representation matters. I know I personally started making board game content because I wanted to be the change I wanted to see. And I realized I wasn't seeing a lot of people of color, women who were making a lot of board game content when I started, 4 or 5 years ago. And that's because, at least for me personally, representation matters. And I feel like for a lot of other people, it does. And just with that growing general awareness, and with board games being so community oriented as they are, being so much about the people, being so much about shared experiences, right? I think there is this desire in the industry or within the hobby to welcome and to invite and to include and to broaden. And so I think it's a natural fit. But of course, like I said earlier, there's no hard definition how to go about that, how to mitigate some people who are uncomfortable with it or some people who have different opinions on what that means, etc. I think there'll be challenges, but I think even the fact that that was mentioned in the guild by multiple people as something that is going to be a move in 2018, I think that says a lot. So that was very cool to see.
Absolutely. Because I honestly I will be honest, I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting it to be something that people thought was going to grow. And absolutely, you said the fact that it was mentioned, and not just by, one person, there's a few people, I think that's fantastic. And I definitely think it's something that, yes, you're right, we'll continue to see. And it's a test, right? And people always need to you got to ease into it, and it's getting there. So I'm very curious to see how this progresses over 2018.
And, I think that beyond just kind of those three themes that arose up, there was a lot of, I think another one that was kind of mentioned a couple times were escape rooms that we talked about, right? I think Burke 4865 mentioned that again. Room escapes will continue to show up with more attempts to make them repeatable instead of one-offs, which is interesting because I may be on the outskirts. I am frustrated that exit isn't reusable.
Yeah, as I've heard people say that.
But I think the component destruction opens up different puzzle avenues. So I think some of the puzzles in exit, I think one of the reasons why I like that series best is because I think some of the puzzles get a little more creative or a little more outside the box because there is that destructive element. So it'll be interesting to see what direction that goes. I mean, quite frankly, just when I think, oh, what else can you do with a puzzle? These darn game designers, man, they are so creative. They come up with all sorts of stuff.
Very much so. And this is actually one should appeal to you, Todd Kauk. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I predict there will be more pretty abstracts with the success of Sagrada, Azul, and Photosynthesis. Topiary is coming out in a few days, too. I have to say, there have been a lot more, and it's not just anytime people think of abstracts, if you're thinking about older ones, it's like, oh, it's like basic. You know what I mean? You don't think of it being enveloped with a very beautiful theme. I'm not saying that doesn't always happen, but just I know back in the day, I'd always think, oh, okay, yeah, all right, I get it. But now I feel like they're really pushing forward with making them very quote unquote pretty. So I do kind of agree with this to a certain degree.
Yeah, I think, and Todd listed a bunch of games I actually really enjoy. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Mandy.
Yeah. The only one I actually haven't played is, I know. See, so it's all you. The only one I haven't played is Photosynthesis. I have it in the room next door. I just haven't played it yet.
But you say that about me, but it's not like you don't enjoy these games as well. So whatever.
I do. No, they're great.
Mad Bana, our friend Mad Bana had a couple of other things. She thinks that legacy games are going to be hot in 2018. Because, I mean, we know, right, a number have already been announced, right? Inca and Marcus Brandt, who designed the Exit series, have one coming out. Betrayal Legacy, right, was announced as well, which I think is fascinating.
Really? Okay, interesting. Because I'll be honest, I wasn't a fan of the board game.
Yeah, Betrayal is one of those games that I have very memorable experiences from. I have a lot of frustrations with it, but man, some of the experiences are just absolutely unforgettable. And I think the concept, and I mean, from a mechanics point of view, yeah, you can pick away at it, but the idea of adding this legacy element to it where you're building these characters, like, right, it is about the storytelling.
Right. Which is the part I liked.
Exactly. And I think, guys, the legacy will be really, really fascinating. Mabana says that Oh, and this is actually one of the comments that would have gone to include. She feels like the gender divide in the categories of the industry are going to fade, and that we'll see more female designers, artists, publishers, content creators, etc. And I think that's goes to what we were just talking about. And then she actually says she'd like to see more content crossovers, so media creators on each other's vlogs and podcasts, etc. A bigger and tighter sense of community throughout, and that's awesome.
Which I do this actually already. So Netters Plays, if you haven't seen her, she's great. Check her out. We actually do a monthly chat on each other's, on channels, and we try and make sure we stay in contact with each other, because she was actually one of the first people that I started talking to in gaming. So we kind of like grew together in this world. So I love that we can do that. And I think it's great. A lot of people, you don't want to be competitive in this world, really. I'm always about pay it forward. If you know something, share it with someone else, make them, be better at what they're doing, and then they in turn will share it to someone else. And guess what? You feel great. You've had this knowledge you've learned and passed it on to someone else, and then you get to enjoy that together, and then everybody else listening is going to benefit. So I think that's 100% great. I love that. Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, I still haven't played Pandemic Legacy. Legacy games, I don't have the time.
It is tough. It is the commitment. They take a commitment for sure. But I'll tell you, because I also haven't played Pandemic Legacy, this new one from Inca and Marcus Brand, because I'm such a fan of them as designers, I'm going to have to figure out a way to make that happen.
I'm a little jealous.
Let's see. What else do people have to say? Oh, Gazencha says that they think well thought out solo modes in multiplayer competitive games beyond kind of a beat your high score. Gazencha, I'm sorry, in the same vein as the automas that you usually get from a game like Stonemaier. And I will say, I think Gazencha's the only person that mentioned this, but solo gaming, I think, is definitely growing. And
yeah. Absolutely.
There's always been this niche. War games have a huge solo play thing. We've always had games like the Nyram series or Friday, but you are seeing more and more multiplayer games coming out with solo modes. Now, maybe there are these high score versions that Gazencha's mentioning, but without a doubt, like Nemo's War from Victory Point, like Healthy Hospital, like these are solo play games. So I would agree with this one, Mandy.
No, I totally, and I'm not a solo game player, but I have been seeing more and more and really interesting ones. Like I think not too long ago, we did teach play my partner, Michael, Hostage Negotiator, and apparently that was quite the thrilling experience. So I do think you're right. A lot of these games are coming out solo and people are enjoying them. So I think it's just going to get better and better. So no, I think it's great. And let's see here. Here we go. So this is a big one. Color choices that are so uncolorblind friendly, those of us who aren't colorblind just look at it and go, how the heck did this get past everyone at the publisher? Yeah. And I mean, this goes both ways. I mean, oh boy, I've even played, so in response to this, I've played games where I don't understand why everything's beige or off-white or just it's odd. Or on the other end where it's like, I'm not colorblind, but I'm like, I can't tell the difference between these colors. Then again, this is also subjective. Like, I like the color purple. I love yellow. A lot of people don't like those colors in games. So this is a tough one.
Yeah.
What do you think? I don't know.
I think it's interesting because there's been enough attention given to the issue of color blindness, which impacts about 5% of the population, that, because there's different kinds of color blindness, which also makes it much more challenging. Right. But through all these different color blindness filters, they've identified kind of 4 base colors, and I'm probably going to get them wrong, but like if you put these 4 colors, because a lot of the vast majority of the games we play typically have 4 player pieces, sets, right? 4 player sets available. And the colors that I think worked traditionally were white, black, yellow, and pink.
See? And those are perfection.
And those may be the wrong ones, but there were 4 very distinct colors that seemed to work with most statuses of color blindness. But I'm not hearing a lot of hunger from the industry at large to kind of convert from red, yellow, green, blue into pink, yellow, white, black. I'm not, I could certainly project and conjecture on why that is, but I do know for a fact that publishers are much more aware of this as an issue, along with color choices, things like contrast, like putting dark gray text on a light gray background. No, right? So we'll see. I think it will be great to have, and I think this goes back to inclusive gaming, right? And incorporating that. So we'll see. I hope so. I think there are largely a lot of simple things people can do to improve on that front. So I hope they're right. I hope that we get that improved over the next year.
Absolutely. What's this? Oh, so we have Birdman, who is familiar to us here at the Dice Tower. I think Time Stories is going to fade away. That game was the proto escape room game or the proto story driven game. Interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going anywhere. It's a different. So, this is where I'm going with this. So a game like Time Stories is a game that works with my schedule versus Pandemic Legacy is not. Doesn't mean it's a better game, worse game. It's just, for me, it's a harder game to play because I have to now dedicate that time every month, week, however often you decide to play it. And it's difficult. I've played Time Stories.
Yeah.
I know. Shocking. I was able to get that in and play it, There are expansions that I can throw in as well. But I was able to play it and get through a scenario. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I would love to do Pandemic Legacy, but my time just doesn't allow for it.
Well, and it's interesting because I think that Birdman was associating Time Stories more with escape room game style, like escape room style games.
Yes.
And you're kind of going more in a different direction with Time Stories towards the legacy direction. And quite frankly, I can see both sides of that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think either of you are incorrect.
Oh my gosh, you're totally right. That's just like escape room. Oh yeah. But yes, no, you're right. Absolutely.
And, because there's that element where you're going through the different loops and learning and it's that.
I think it's the vibe that I got from it. I'm not saying it's necessarily that type of game, but I just think that's the vibe. So I still got that feel, not the full effect, but yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think Time Stories, it's an interesting position because I think the problem, and keep in mind, I adore Time Stories. I just love this concept. I've played a bunch of the scenarios. I love it, love it, love it. I think they have a few challenges. One, I think their launch, like they had this weird thing where they launched and then they had kind of a big delay between expansions. I think some people never got over that concept of buying this base game and then spending another $25 or $30 for another scenario and whether that price point made it work for them. And I also think that there's maybe similar to the escape room games, the inconsistency can be a benefit or a detractor, depending on your point of view, right? Because maybe the puzzle types or the story type of a specific set doesn't appeal to you. Or maybe one is just more objectively worse than another one, or what have you. And on the other hand, you could say, hey, I'm getting a lot of different gameplay experiences through the same system, which is so I can see both sides of it. It'll be interesting. I know they're not stopping. I know they have a bunch more scenarios planned. I know I'm going to buy them. So, we'll see.
It has its place. It has its, like everything, it has its place. I don't think it's getting replaced. I just think it has its place.
I think the perfect crowning comment is from our friend Grimbo, who predicts the Game of Life legacy will be a thing. Can't argue with that.
Can I say, and maybe this is something I should have said, I feel like it's like movies. I feel a lot of remakes might happen here this year. Seriously, I feel this year could be the year of the remakes.
Interesting.
So, maybe a twist on the remake, but I feel like this is what's going to happen. There's just so many good games that just kind of fell by the wayside, and people are like, well, wait a second, that was a cool game. Let's bring it back.
Well, and I think that's for example, a game I just talked about earlier, Bali, right? That was a remake of Rapa Nui. So
exactly.
I think that's a super smart prediction.
That's my prediction.
All right.
Remakes. I think that's going to be a thing. Who knows? Game of Life may get a legacy remake. I don't know. Just tried to throw that in there.
Well, and I think if I had a prediction, I think we will see greater exploration and increased exploration of themes. I think we're going to start seeing, I think Pie Town was a great example. What a fun theme, baking pies. And, it was nice to do something a little different. You could have put other themes on that game. Yeah, but the pie competition in Pie Town, it's just so wonderful, So that is what I hope to see. I mean, we will always have, and I am a big fan of these, our dear cube pushers and our trading in the Mediterranean that we all know Tom is a huge fan of. We'll always have those, but
exactly.
I love choice and options and variety. So that's what I'm hoping for in 2018.
There you go. Lots of great predictions. We need to revisit this at the end of the year to see if any of these actually happened or stayed status quo. Thank you so much to everyone who contributed. And so we'll keep an eye and see how the trends go and if these predictions are correct.
And with that, I think we're going to bring our episode to a close. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. This ran maybe just a little bit longer than normal, but we were just so excited to be back in 2018 and to talk games with all of you. Don't forget, if you have questions for us, you can email us at Suzanne and Mandy with an I, at gmail.com. And hey, don't forget to check out the Dice Tower's 2018 fundraising Kickstarter campaign live right now at the time of this recording and at the time this podcast episode airs. As always, thank you so much for listening and for being part of our Dice Tower family. It's always such a pleasure to hear from you on the Guild or in social media or in our email as well. And so thank you to all of you. Next episode 538, Tom and Eric will be back and they'll be talking about the best of 2008. So make sure you tune in then. Until episode 539, we will see you then.
See you next time. Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vazel Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need. Learn more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvazel.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandy, and Eric, with assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, and Rob Searing. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at coolstuffinc.com. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at boardgamegeek.com. Following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. So it's that time again, 2 truths and a lie. So I'm going to go first. So last week, I talked about Christmas is my favorite holiday. I wore braces and I had turquoise hair. If you guessed that Christmas is my favorite holiday was the lie, that'd be right. Christmas is not my favorite holiday.
I know what it is. I know.
Any guesses? Or should I save that? Oh, maybe I should save that one.
Oh, okay. You're just gonna cliffhanger that? That's
that's mean. I might get haters. No, I'm joking. No, you could share. I think most people know. So, do you want to tell everyone what my favorite holiday is?
No, you tell them. I wouldn't steal it from you.
So, Halloween. I love it. I used to have some crazy makeup and costumes. Oh, Halloween is it for me. So, Christmas is lovely. Just not my favorite. So, how about you, Suzanne? What about your reveal?
Last week, I said I dressed as Wonder Woman 3 Halloweens in a row. I dressed as a stormtrooper for a Halloween, and I dressed as a bee for Halloween. And I never dressed as a stormtrooper. I preferred Chewbacca. Chewbacca was my Star Wars character of choice. Thank you very much. Some of you already know that. But I did dress as Wonder Woman 3 years in a row. That's how much. Oh, man, the good old Linda Carter. Oh, I was obsessed. So there you go.
That's fantastic. I need to see pictures of this.
No, yeah.
I need evidence.
All right. What's new for us this week, Mandy?
All right. New this week. Here we go. I met Alice Cooper. My favorite movie is Singing in the Rain. And I'm a big fan of hard metal music.
Mm-hmm. All right. And for me, I wrote a paper in college about Xena Warrior Princess. I wrote a paper in college about the Teletubbies. And I wrote a paper in college about the A-Team.
Oh, it's a good mix this week. So start thinking of what could be the lie.
You have a job to do. Get it done.
Aw, Muffin.